So I'm really excited to introduce our final speaker of the night. So her name is Samantha Yarwood, and she also has 3 fun facts. So Samantha studied to be a sommelier, and she's currently working on her chef certificate. She was on a float in Carnival at Sambadrome in Rio. And she is taking singing classes and performs at the Rivoli every few months. Very cool. Sam, come on up here and share your fuck-ups.
Hi. Oh, I guess I need that. First fuck up, you need the clicker to actually change your slides. So good evening. Hi. Those were amazing talks that we've heard so far tonight, and I know I've had a really good time and been entertained, so I'm hoping to share back a little bit. But when Marsha was asking those questions around, do you work for a corporate? Do you work for a startup? Are you a part-time entrepreneur? I'm a little bit of everything. So my background is, I ended up working for Starbucks. That's a whole other fuck-up story. No, seriously, I hated big American corporations. It was supposed to be 4 weeks. I literally took the job because I had to pay my bills. And 15 years later, I'm like, what the heck happened? Anyways, it was an amazing 15 years. And in those 15 years, I learned a lot. And a large part of who I am today is because of those experiences that I had working for the brand, getting to know how to bring values and brands to life, but also I got to live around the world. I lived in 3 different countries, Canada, the Netherlands, Switzerland, back to the Netherlands at one point, and I got to do a lot of really cool things. So it was a lot of fun. So as I was thinking about tonight, and I jumped at the chance to talk about my fuck-ups, I was like, what do I share? Because honestly, I've had so many. I didn't even know where to start. So I started to think about something that I really loved, which was my boat. And I still have that boat, by the way. It sits in Amsterdam. My friends look after it, and I try and get onto it anytime I can. But me and my friend who's in that picture, we decided one day over some wine to take that boat from Amsterdam to France. So you might wonder what 2 girls are doing drinking wine on a boat, thinking, let's take this boat from Amsterdam to France. And what we were questioning is, could we? So we actually hired an intern to figure out if we could take a boat that far. We didn't know if we could. Turns out you can. But you might also wonder, what does that have to do with marketing and lessons learned and fuck-ups? Well, I'm going to tell you that, because let me tell you, when shit happens and shit goes real, whether you're on a small boat or whether you're in the marketing world, there's always something to learn. And chances are, there's probably something to relearn, and there's some things that you need to just forget about. So when Rochelle and I decided that we should take our boat to France, we started to look into this, and we knew where we were going to go. So fast forward to, we've got it all planned, we've got 3 weeks off of work, we get onto the boat, and we're waving goodbye to our friends who are standing on the side of the canal, and I look at her and I go, which way? And she looked at me and she said, what do you mean? And I'm like, no, seriously, which way? I don't know how to get to Utrecht from here. And everybody started laughing because they thought I was being funny. I was not being funny. I had no clue where we were going. Later on that day, we stopped and we got maps, because what we also realized is, no, I'm not joking, that's actually at a picnic table partway on our way to getting to our first stop, because we're like, we don't even have maps, so we don't know how to get to where we're going. Great idea. Similar to that was when I first started working in social media. So I've been working in marketing for a while, way back in the days before there was something even called Facebook. I know, hard to believe. Well, there was one of our wonderful baristas at Starbucks came up with this great idea that we need to be on this platform called Facebook. Now, if you're American at the time, nobody knew what Facebook was, and in fact, all of my American friends told me it would never be anything and that I should really be on MySpace. Well, who won that one? Anyways, when you think about this, we launched a Facebook page and people started following us, and we didn't really know what to do with it. So one of our baristas, the same barista Brad, who now works in social media, and he's friggin' awesome, came up with this concept of, why don't we do something to surprise and delight our customers like we do in the stores, but let's do it online. So we did a free muffin day. And what ended up happening is we tripled our Facebook followers. Amazing. So at that point in time, I'm sitting in a place called Europe, looking after EMEA, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And at that time, I think I had 18 countries, and all of those countries were seeing what the US was doing. So what did they want to do? They wanted to launch social media too. So nobody really knew what it was, what it could be. Everybody had theories on what they should do, what they shouldn't do. Every country had different platforms. And everybody started to use all of these different platforms and communicating in different ways. Well, if you can imagine that, you've got 18 countries, which is growing on a regular basis. And as we're growing countries, we're all using different things. So fast forward to what I call the Wheel of Fortune. It was almost like if you went onto any channel, you had no clue what was going to be there. You might go on there and it might be a poster that you saw in the stores. You might go on there, it might be some random shot that somebody took. But the one thing that it wasn't is it wasn't engaging and we weren't connecting with our customers. It was a great big mess. So what we decided to do is get a little bit more intentional about what we were talking about in our brand narrative. And we started to look at what are those stories that we want to tell and what are the most effective channels to do that in. It took us well over a year and a half to, I'm going to say, clean up and do things differently, to move into more of a state where our imagery reflected who the brand was and how we wanted to show up. So what would you take from those examples is anything you do, be intentional on. You might not know where you're going at first, but be clear on where you want to go to. And also, you might change your way on your path there. You might learn some things, but have a clear direction. So fast forward to the next example and the next fuck up I had. So we'd been on the boat at this point for probably about 15 days, and we'd just gone into this lock. And as we closed the lock, I was sitting there with the paddle, and my friend and I got into an argument about how we should really be tying up the boat. And I wanted to do it one way, she wanted to do it another way. And anyways, this argument went back and forth, and finally I got so frustrated, I just threw my hands up and I said, you know what, you fucking do it, I'm not doing this anymore. Well, if I hadn't have let go at that moment, what wouldn't have happened is our boat wouldn't have gone forward, and we would have actually knocked out our engine, because what we didn't know as the water was going down, the wall jetted out. So how does that apply to marketing? Well, as I mentioned to you, when we first started in social media, we didn't know what to do with it. So what did we also start doing? We started to try different things to see how we could engage with customers and drive people from online into the physical store. So one of the great ideas that somebody in my team had, and I think it was a brilliant idea, was how do we say to customers, if you want to come in, we'll treat you and your friend to a cup of coffee. So essentially a buy one, get one. I'm like, amazing. She was like, you know what we'll do? We're going to create this Facebook page where we can talk about our farmer stories, create really engaging content, and we're going to have this offer if you're following us. And that's the only way that you can actually come in and redeem. Brilliant. So we do it. You know what happened? It went viral, and I mean viral in a really, really big way. But we kind of forgot something. We forgot to put some terms and conditions on, including that it could only be used in Switzerland and Austria. So next thing we know, it's gone viral in a big way in Asia. So I get this call from Seattle, like, what's happening? I'm like, as he's telling me the story, I'm like, oh my God, this is really bad. We need to take it down. So anyways, we had to react quickly. So another similar story, I'm going to tie these in 2 seconds, is 72 and Sunny. Are you guys familiar with them? Amazing agency, creative's fantastic. But I refer to my experience with them as 72 and Not So Sunny. And not because of them, but because of me. I talk at a conference every year in Austria. It's one of my favorite conferences. And I was on my way there, and as usual, I was really excited. It was my second year. Couldn't wait to catch up with some friends. We now call each other family. And while I was on my way there, I quickly looked at an email. The back part of this story is I had recently started working for a new leader who I was really struggling with. His style was very different than mine. I didn't know how to connect with him, and I really wanted to prove to him that I was good at what I did and that I knew what I was doing. As we engaged with 72, I did not have the agency experience that he did, but I was so damn determined to prove to him I knew what I was doing. I just continued to push forward. Well, what ended up happening is I responded to an email they had without reading through all of the details, and I committed to moving forward on some projects, which I meant to. Fast forward to a month later, and if anybody works in the retail business, you know that sometimes things change and things shift, and you need to change where your spend's gonna go. And that happened with our relationship with 72 and Sunny. We decided to pull back on some activations. What I hadn't done is taken the time to look at the bottom and the small print in the email. I had agreed to pay them no matter whether we did the work or not. Yeah, big mistake. 1/3 of our marketing budget gone. Thankfully, I had a really great leader at the time who jumped in to help me and support me. And what I learned from all of those examples are a few things. One, don't be afraid to ask. There is actually nothing wrong with asking for help. And in fact, people really like to help. The more you ask people and bring them into the conversation, the better they feel, but you also learn. That was a huge learning for me. The other thing is call in the experts when you need them. Don't worry about your ego. Put that aside, because if somebody's had experience with any of the scenarios that you're going through, you can learn from their mistakes, because chances are they've probably had something similar to happen to them. But also, they're gonna, again, feel good, and it's gonna help you progress. So I've learned a lot of things through the boat and also through my marketing career. And I've had many more fuck-ups than that, but hopefully that hopes to articulate to you that, you know what, no matter what, think about where you want to go. Don't worry about how you're going to get there, because it's going to change along the way anyways. And also, when you need help, don't be afraid to pull other people in and learn from the experts. So thank you. Oh, I guess questions.
Can't go anywhere. Sam, thank you so much for sharing that story. I think the way you tied in that analogy with the boat to those lessons in marketing and in business and in life was really powerful. So thank you again for sharing that. And let's open it up to Q&A for Sam.
Hi. Sorry, I just totally took over there. I'm like, yeah, go.
So you started your trek through Europe and the canals with no map, and then you got a map halfway through.
We actually had to get like 4 or 5, because apparently there isn't just one.
So if you were to do any journey, whether it's like a new marketing journey, a new startup journey, would you recommend starting with a map, or would you recommend having nothing and then getting a map like when you get lost?
That is a great question, and I think it depends on the individual. So I'm going to be completely honest. I'm struggling in that in my personal life as well, or where I am now, is I have gone through my entire life and career with whatever's popped up I've said yes to. And I have just kind of gone with what feels good and what makes sense to me. But I've also realized what happens in that is I haven't always been intentional. So then I tried to be intentional. And what I've realized about being intentional is it's still going to change along the way. So even if you have that map is probably outdated, might not have all the up-to-date information. Even when you do have a map, you might go down a river, and this actually did happen, where all of a sudden I was like, it feels like it's getting shallower. And then I started to hear a noise, and it was like basically the bottom of the boat dragging. And I looked at Rochelle, and I'm like, I think we need to turn around. Well, turns out that wasn't on the map, is they'd actually blocked off the water. So we were getting to a more shallow area where there wasn't water for us to go through. And I think life's like that too. I believe that you have to do what's right for you. And I think a lot of times there's signs around, and you know, and you can feel it in your gut. I think somebody earlier on, Paul was saying about he's doing the meditation. I do a meditation practice every day. And I find that helps me to be really in tune with who I am and what feels good. Do that as much as you can, because if you can be aligned with what you should do, I think that's the best path forward. So I don't know that there is a right answer. You've got to decide what's right for you. That was a long answer.
Great, thank you. Okay.
So thanks for the talk. It was really good, really amazing. So I'm curious, earlier everybody stood up in terms of like what were the status in terms of job employment and whatnot, where they're at. When people got up for corporate, we got a lot of booze. You left Starbucks, Nestle. So the question is, based on all the learnings and the fuck-ups, how are you using them now, and what's that journey like right now if you're not necessarily in a corporate per se world?
So I'm being a bit of a wild explorer right now, where I'm trying a little bit of everything. I joke that I see what falls into my lap and then I pick it up, and then I'll see where it goes. I think my corporate experience was very different than a few people. So I'll tell you a story about a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur. He has launched many businesses. A lot have failed. A lot of them have been very successful. And he came to work to job shadow me because we're both doing the same master's program. And he came to work, and when he was job shadowing me, he told me that he hated big corporations and that he would never work from one. At the end of the day, and he wrote a paper on this, is I changed his mind and the company changed his mind. Because what he had a chance to see is you can be very entrepreneurial in an environment, and you're an entrepreneur. And I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been looking at what is human behavior, whether it's in terms of a business context and the operations of the business or a customer, and what can we develop to actually deliver on that human need. So that's an approach that I'm trying to take in my current life. Kind of a fuck up in some ways, but as I was getting prepared for tonight and to do some other talks, I realized that I still had Starbucks on my LinkedIn, and I'm like, I can't have that. And I've had this idea around this type of consultancy I'd like to build for the future, called Shift, based on transforming things and moving, because I think that something happens that ignites fundamental transformation. So how do I help people do that? So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to throw it up on my LinkedIn profile, and created a company like literally overnight, got it registered, etc. Because that philosophy around just try something and see where it goes and make different iterations of it. So that's the similar approach that I'm trying to take in my life right now, because you prototype things in big corporations, you prototype things in small corporations. I'm prototyping, and that's what I'm taking into my journey now.
Hello, Sam. That was great presentation. So following up with that map questions, you mentioned you always take what's through to you whenever whatever happens in life. And there are also another things people say, sometimes you need to step back, think about that, and then probably find something more suitable or probably will be a good match so people don't ghost on you. So
I love it. Yeah.
When you look back, will you ever look at some decisions you make and then say, I wish I can do better, or you regret it?
Oh, all the time.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
And I think, there's been a lot where I've jumped in and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I don't know if that was a good decision. I'll give you a great example. When I moved to Switzerland. So the way that I made my decision about Switzerland is I was sitting at my desk. It was over Christmas and New Year's. Me and a colleague were talking, and we realized it was that time of year we started to do strategic planning. So most businesses, every year you sit down and you plan out what the business is going to look like for the next 3 to 5 years. You also do your annual operating plan, which is the next year. I started doing that, and as we were talking about it, I went, isn't it funny, David, that we do this for the business every year, but we don't do this for ourselves? And we started to think about it, and we're like, well, yeah, we should apply all the things that we learn in the corporate world to our personal lives. We should have a mission, we should have a vision statement, we should start thinking about what our values are, how we want to show up, and start to write plans. So we did that, and one of my goals was, in 6 months, I either wanted to love my job or I wanted to have a new job. So fast forward to 6 months later, and I've been offered a job as the Director of Marketing and Communications in Switzerland. And I also am loving my job, and I have a new boss who's friggin' amazing. So I don't know what to do. You know how I made my decision? I went on something called the Camino. I don't know if you know it. It's a pilgrimage that you can do in Spain. You go walking. I went on that pilgrimage, and I kept meeting people who spoke German. So I was like, that's got to be a sign. If I get offered the job, I'm taking it. So I literally was sitting in my friend's car, and the phone rang, and I was offered the job, and I went, I'm going to Switzerland. I had never been to Switzerland except for in the airport. So I took it because I thought it'd be a good growth opportunity, and also, I'm going to be honest, I took it because of the title. So 6 months later, I'm sitting alone in my house in Switzerland, bawling. I literally almost went home every single night and cried, hating my life. I realized I took the job for all of the wrong reasons. I didn't think about why I was doing it. I didn't think about what my values were and how that was aligned with the role that I was taking. And I found myself in a similar situation to which I'd been in many times before, where I'd taken a job for the sake of taking a job and for title and ego versus actually thinking about what I really wanted. At that moment, I was like, I've got a few options. I can pull the chute and do something else, or I can really try to make it work here. So I put together in my head, like, what do I need to do to get myself out there and meet people? And I turned my life around in Switzerland to the point where I didn't want to leave when I was asked to move back to Amsterdam. But there's been many moments in my life where I've done things like that, where I've just said yes, and then afterwards gone, oh, maybe that was not the best idea. And as you can tell from my work experience that I shared today, there's been moments like that too in my career life.
When you look back, and if that Switzerland opportunity came again, will you still say yes?
Totally.
Awesome.
Yes. I think everything that's happened in my life, and also, I don't think anything's a failure if you learn from it. It's a waste of time, and it's a total failure if you don't learn from it. And if you can put reflection into your practice, and it might mean that you'll say to yourself, I should never do that again, but try to learn, relearn, and some things just get rid of. Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, hi.
It's a really quick one. How did you celebrate when you arrived in France on the boat?
Oh, we drank a lot of champagne and also something we call Chateau Casquette, which if you ever go to France in the grocery stores, you can buy it. Looks like a plastic keg, and it's really cheap wine, like €1.99. It's not that bad. And if you take it on a boat and you need to put up your tent and you don't have a hammer, it works really well. Thanks. Okay, anyone? Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Amazing. Those were 3 incredible talks, right, guys? Yeah. Amazing.